Thank you, Mr Speaker.
I call Te Ora Favell.
Tēnā koe, Mr Chair. Kia ora tātou katoa. I wanted to take an opportunity to look at a fair chunk of the SOPs that I've presented to the House, Mr Chair, but to set the scene and to make sure that it's in a context. 1 in 5 Māori will have an alcohol abuse disorder in some stage in their lives, Mr Chair. 1 in 10 will become dependent on alcohol. And those most likely to have alcohol abuse and dependence issues are those living in the very poorest households and communities. So, alcohol use in low socioeconomic communities is associated with high levels of crime, educational underachievement, poor economic prospects and chronic welfare dependency. And that's where the Māori Party do not want our people to be. Lifting the standard of living in these communities means addressing alcohol issues. So, Māori make up a disproportionate number of the clients in alcohol and drug treatment services. Māori tamariki and rangatahi are seen by AOD treatment services at least 3 times the rate of non-Māori the same age. So, from the Māori Party perspective, we have much to do, and while the bill does go some way towards addressing some of those issues, clearly across the House, as we've had the debate over the last 2 days, there are some of us who feel we could go a little bit further. There are a number of key clauses that I wanted to identify to the House, Mr Chair, in my opportunity to speak, and pretty much most of them are captured in this part. The first one is relatively straightforward, and it is talking about the notion of a sinking lid policy, if you like, on off licences. What we're talking about here is starting to bring down the number of liquor stores, while allowing relocation of existing premises. So not to disadvantage those who are already there, but certainly look towards the sinking lid policy, if you want to call it that. Mr Speaker, when I was a young fellow in my hometown of Ngongotaha, which is just north of Rotorua, there was one pub, full stop. One pub, whether that's a good thing or bad thing I won't say, but it was a vital part of the community, and I listened to the Honourable Judith Collins talk about her circumstances when she was younger, and pretty much my mother in particular visited that place, and it was good for the community. It was good for the community. And my dad, I can be proud to say, blessed his soul, was known as a sly grogger at a time when in Mangakino, at the power station, when Māori were not allowed to buy alcohol. So there is a bit of a context there, but sir, come back to Ngongotaha. One pub for that small community. If you go through Rotorua heading to Tauranga on the back road, you'll find it. Now, 2 bottle stores, 2 pubs, and a supermarket, all selling alcohol. And the what? Oh well, the point is, oh no, was it? No, you're joking. Not Ngongotaha pub. No, he was up at the lake house. Mr. Speaker, I digress from the topic. So what I'm saying is that, and other speakers have talked about, is that the proliferation of venues that sell alcohol has grown, and I'm talking about my small hometown. As I say, had one pub which was a central focus, now to having 5 places that you can buy alcohol. I mean, it just doesn't seem right. And we've heard from other stories, I'm sure Louisa Wall talked about Manurewa, her electorate, where you can walk around the community, Otara, the smaller places you can walk around, and at every blinging corner store, at every corner you find a liquor outlet, small even, they can fit in half the size of, even a quarter of the size of this house, set up to sell alcohol. So we've got to do something about that, and my amendment is about moving in that direction to bringing a sinking lid policy while not advantaging those that are already in that business, I suppose. So that's the first point, and I hope that the House gives some serious consideration to that. A part of that also is looking, another part of the amendment that I bring to the House is changing and adapting the trading hours from 8 a.m. to 4 a.m. To 10 a.m. To 3 a.m. That's a change in opportunity, again, to sell alcohol. And the other element that's brought in here, sir, is for unlicensed premises to have a one-way door policy, meaning that once you're in the premises, you're stuck there. If you go out, goodbye, don't come back after 1 o'clock. That's time to go home, which means that, very often I know that having taken some young adults from home, again into, sir, thank you, sir, moving into Rotorua, they tend to move around for whatever reason, and in doing so consume more alcohol as they go, likely to have some in the cars because they want to visit all of the nightclubs. This, sir, is one way of dealing with this particular angle of young people moving from place to place. Once you go on the premises, you're there, you're stuck there, and if you go out, end of story, from between the hours of 1 and 3 a.m. We think that this is a good provision that would hopefully be supported by the House. And I noted some of the comments that were made by the Minister earlier about the trading out, or many comments actually, but I note, sir, that for only 3 out of the 24 hours when alcohol, there's only 3 out of 24 hours when alcohol is not available to be sold at this point in time, and that's wrong. That's wrong. So the third part of the amendments that I've put forward are talking about the proximity to schools with respect to being a part of the deciding factors about whether licence can be issued. I know that Lewis Wall talked about that, and some have talked about perhaps a distance. What we're talking about here is making sure that it has a little bit more bite to how those licensing authorities actually go about their work. Again, we think this is a sensible thing, but it gives a little bit, as I say, a little bit more clout to licensing authorities to give more consideration to the placing of where schools are in terms of determining whether the place that's selling the alcohol is allowed to have a licence and in fact set up a premises in that proximity. And the last one that I wanted to just touch base on in the bit of time that I've got available without diverting too far is to talk about this question about the appointment to licensing committees within territorial authorities. And in the sense, because Māori, for all intents and purposes, have been at the bad end of some of the statistics, and I opened with some of those comments, Mr. Chair. The view is that it would be appropriate to have Māori representation as of right, if you like, on those territorial authorities. So the SOP is asking that there be provisions, or rather the provisions be with respect to the appointment of licensing committees within territorial authorities are amended so as to provide for appointment of Māori members by local iwi or hapu to those committees. And in the amendment, sir, it talks about that 3 are appointed by the territorial authority for that district, and that 1 person is appointed by the local iwi or hapu. I mean, what we found in terms of even places like the Rena, and we spoke about it in the Mount Maunganui Amendment Bill recently, is not only the impact but the ability of Māori to be a part of decision-making processes within those authorities by hapu and by iwi is an important ingredient to getting buy-in. It would seem to us, back on the experience of the Rena disaster, that having Māori involvement at that level, at the decision-making level, brings about buy-in, certainly at a hapu level, because these appointments would be made by hapu and iwi people. Therefore, there must be a link back to the local community. And in that regard, Mr. Chair, we would have hoped that the Minister looked carefully at this one. It's not a big ask. 1 person, iwi, hapu, delegate, to be appointed onto the territorial authorities to be able to give some insight, if you like, into not how Māori think about alcohol, because sometimes thinking doesn't come into it, but certainly to be able to have input about the disastrous effects that it has had on Māori, hapu, iwi, kainga. So, Mr. Speaker, those are pretty much the main, the main thrust of the amendments, certainly around the licensing requirements and conditions. I haven't touched on minimum pricing because I think we'll just hold that one for a little bit longer, but certainly, sir, we believe that these amendments that are here are fair, are considered, and may well add to, well, at least contribute in some way to dealing with some of the issues that members across the House have raised. And we ask the Minister to give serious consideration, perhaps to amendments in that order. Thank you very much. Kia ora tātou.
Call Lewis Wall.
Kia ora, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Just to clarify my SOP, it does